good evening. My name is Amy Kendall, and I am the Early Childhood Administrator at Maryville Academy. And I'm really excited today to invite our friend Dawn Naperkowski, who works at Maryville, and she comes with us with a lot of experience, specifically working with children and families regarding all kinds of different issues that come up as they're navigating growing up and different developmental stages. What's really nice about this conversation that I'm looking forward to is Dawn does come to us today as a licensed clinical social worker, and we talked and we decided that in these times that we hear a lot lately in the news and at the schools and with our neighbors, that stress really has shown up in many different ways for adults. And we're seeing that with our family members and our friends. And as adults, we are able to talk to each other and try and troubleshoot and do some decision making regarding different things that are going in our life. But it looks sometimes a little bit different when it comes to young children. And when we think about Maryville, and part of our mission is to keeping children safe, we recognize how much stress can impact children and how that can be avoided in a way that can make a family be a little bit more cohesive and happy, particularly even when there are difficult times. You know, there's a big word out there that is used frequently, which is called resilience. And I don't know, Dawn, maybe you could start us out on that idea of resilience. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. It's such a great word to use, I think, because it implies that no matter what you've gone through and no matter who you are, there's something that you can do and there's something within you that can help you to move forward in a positive way. Even if you've gone through excessive amounts of stress, or you can say, well, my story and my experience was worse than anybody else's, and well, I went through this, so it's hard for me. At the end of the day, no matter what you've been through and what stress you've been caused, the concept of resilience is that you have the ability to bounce back in a positive way and to get your life back. And the point of us being here today, too, is to talk about whether it was from parenting or whether it was from being a small child where we felt like our resilience was taken away from us and we had too much stress put on us. We want to give everybody an idea of how to be the healthiest parent you can be and how to not only use resilience for yourself, but to help your children as well to move forward from stress.
Well, and I'm grateful for the energy and the time that you put in putting some information together for us here. So we're going to walk through this, and maybe you can talk through with us a little bit about this slide that we're showing right now in regards to stress and what different levels. Maybe you can explain this a little bit to us.
I'd love to. So you see 3 circles here, and really what it's noting are that there really are 3 different kinds of stress. So you have positive stress. I know that sounds weird because we always associate stress with something that's negative, but it's not. Sometimes stress is actually positive and helpful for us. There's also stress that's tolerable. It's maybe neither for a good reason or a bad reason, but maybe I'm driving on the way to the store and there's traffic and that's just something that I have to deal with, but I can tolerate it, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if my kid's crying in the back and there's not really something I can do to help them to maybe calm down in the moment. And then there's toxic stress, and that's the kind of stress that really just like a red traffic light, right? Like you're seeing that and it just stops you in your tracks. Over long periods of time, really toxic stress actually leads to, from childhood growing into adolescence and then adulthood, you can actually be stressed and do a worse performance in school and work and later in life if you don't take care of toxic stress.
Well, and I know that right now when you talk about that term toxic stress, it's really important for us to recognize how it has an impact on our own well-being and our physical well-being. And so sometimes when we start to see adults and children getting sick or their immune system is not as strong, that's a place that we need to look at. And also, sleep is very important in all of this. I was just thinking as I look at the positive, what would be an example of a positive stress? And when I'm thinking of children, I'm thinking of a time, depending on what age they are, like right before they're about to take a test, that they might be feeling a little bit of anxiety and wondering if they've prepared themselves enough for that particular test. Would that be a good example?
That's a really good example. I've used that with clients as well, because people might come in and say like, well, this is too stressful for me, right? Like my class I'm going into, my teacher is scary, and they're not going to have any multiple choice questions. I have to know everything by heart. And I have to remind people that we can do hard things, right? That's one of those affirmations that I love, is I can do hard things. And some things are meant to make us grow. So that example of positive stress is a really good one, because we know some stress is inevitable, but some appropriate stress is going to help us grow into a better person.
So when you're thinking about children and, what we've experienced and what we are every day, driving to work today, I drove past a daycare and saw, the parents standing outside and the kids with their masks on, and these were youngsters. These were children under the age of 5, and just recognizing that even just that experience of starting your day out in that fashion, where maybe over the weekend, they're with their family and things are a little bit more relaxed and it's family time. And then sort of there's these expectations and boundaries that sometimes can throw you off a little bit. And also, in a school type setting, depending on if there's a test or different things, are somebody's sick in the family, obviously that's sort of inevitable. And what do you think is a good way to kind of address that with children when you see that?
There are good ways to talk about stress with children. I think that one thing that we don't want to do is sort of brush it aside. I think the biggest thing that, and with good intention too, we try to tell our kids, right, oh, it's not that bad, and we'll get over it. But it really is okay to talk about things that are uncomfortable and to say, tell me how you feel. Or to say, I was stressed by that too. If I'm auntie or mommy or daddy, whoever I am, I want to let them know, that was stressful for me too, hearing all that crying that your brother was doing, and everybody was trying to have fun at the table and you got upset, right? And so there's ways to model talking about our feelings in a way that's healthy. It almost really helps us to feel better when we're able to do that.
Before we get into this next part of things, I have to be honest that I feel like different generations have approached stress in different ways, and that I have found it kind of interesting in the way you're describing it versus maybe the way I was parented or other people, where you were kind of told that this is how it is and not necessarily share your feelings. So it's a different approach that I think a lot of people are appreciating and relearning how to address these things with their children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And so this slide that we're looking at right here, so this is Erikson's psychosocial developmental theory. And it's pretty common, so if you wanted to look that up in Google or your search bar, you could. And there's a lot of really good examples of very detailed explanations of what every stage in our age of development we're going through. At least according to Erikson's research. Of course, there's all kinds of different examples, but in this picture, I would want all our viewers to look at the words that are at the top of people's heads. So you'll see it says basic trust over the infant, autonomy over the toddler, and initiative over the preschooler. And those are really what we're looking for. We're looking to accomplish those just steps in life at that age. But if we don't do what we set out to do, or if for some reason there was maybe a lack of trust for the infant, or things didn't go well for the toddler or the preschool age, then you're actually going to see what happens on the bottom of the slide, where it says under the infant, they develop basic mistrust in their environment. The toddler could develop a lot of shame and doubt in themselves and in others if they don't adequately develop. And then the preschooler can develop guilt moving forward into life. And you'll see all the way into being an older adult how much that can affect us if not taken care of. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that because, I'll start with the infants. Infants, you might be thinking, well, how can an infant build trust? It really comes down to the most basic thing that an infant would do. What do you do, Amy, when an infant cries?
Well, you want to be able to look at them, perhaps pick them up, you might rock them, but you're going to respond to them pretty quickly to see what you can do to calm them down.
Right, and so that was really good. So the baby's crying, let me pick it up and see if rocking helps. And then for some people, that's not helping. So what do you do if it doesn't help when they're crying?
Well, that happened today at the crisis nursery today, and the mom was there and she was breastfeeding, and when she finished, we were, handing the child off to our childcare staff, and the baby recognized it was somebody else, and so she was doing some extra special smiling and cooing and gave her the pacifier and, really kind of worked with her to say that, I'm okay, I'm a trusted adult, and it was going to take a little bit of time because it was her first time away from her mom.
Yeah, that's really special because what I liked about what Amy said is that there wasn't one specific thing that worked. They tried a lot of different things. And so you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to get it right the first time. It's okay not to know. But when you pick that baby up and it's crying and you rock it and it's still crying and then you try the bottle, but that's what helps. It's just about being present and seeing what works. And so now what you did today and what that mother did and that worker did was they helped that baby establish trust to know that whether it's my parent or someone else, the world is going to take care of me. And so sometimes it's the alternative where the baby might think, no one fed me when I was hungry or no one picked me up when I cried.
Well, and one, I don't hear this so much anymore, but it does creep up sometimes that if you pick them up, you're spoiling them.
I hear that, yeah.
And
what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
Is there a ratio?
Is there a ratio?
Yeah.
In terms of...
Can someone pick their baby up too much? Do we let them cry sometimes?
Well, I think that we all have our own instinctual knowledge of our children in the beginning.
Right.
I don't think that you can spoil a baby. I think that what happens is that you want to be able to support that attachment with that child, with whoever the caretaker is going to be, but recognizing, and as you said, if you're present with them, you'll start to see if that's a cry of, that they're wet, or if it's a cry of pain, or if it's a cry. So the more you're spending time and you're really paying attention to them, you'll be able to know how to respond in a way that maybe isn't necessarily picking them up as spoiling, which isn't the case, but sometimes we're not necessarily being creative with other alternatives to try and help soothe the baby.
That's interesting. I really like that example too, and later on in the PowerPoint, if we get to it, we talk about how, you don't have to be perfect, and all you have to know is what is normal for your child. Because every child's so different. It's not a cookie cutter fix for humans and personality.
Well, and I think now what we're seeing, particularly in the pandemic, with children who stayed at home for school and with their babies being born and then being more with a very intimate family for longer lengths of time, maybe families were not going out with their children, we're seeing some results of recognizing children are more slow to warm up, and maybe we need to recognize that their sensory input may be a little bit different because of what their early experiences were, or if somebody's used to being at home
Okay.
and then they're on the bus or at the park, or learning how to share. Like, their interactions now are different.
Yeah.
When, depending on how long that has been, that may be a complicated interaction, or it may not be, but that's just something to be in tune with and be aware of.
Right. Yeah, and we know definitely about those pandemic babies who are turning into toddlers now and just really trying to figure out, is the world safe? I haven't been around too many people. Now I'm around a lot of people. And so we're starting to see all these different aspects of safety and feeling secure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just go on to the next one, Amy. This one, in regards to being a toddler, what we generally want to see is that a toddler can gain autonomy, which sounds ludicrous, right? Because the child is so young, and my first thought for a lot of parents is like, oh my God, they're trying to open every single cabinet, and oh my gosh, they're going to stick their finger in the outlet. But we know outside of safety issues that we can prevent, right? We can get cabinet locks, and we can get something to cover an outlet. It's actually really good for a child to be so exploratory and to really want to figure things out for themselves. As maybe depending on what you have going on in your life, if you're someone who's really busy or you have other kids too, you can start to feel like, oh my gosh, they're going through everything, or that noisy toy right now. Are they doing this to annoy me? And so it's always helpful to be able to think about your stress level and how you tolerate stress too, so that you can take a moment to breathe and recognize, my toddler's just in the toddler stage. They're not trying to be annoying on purpose. They're not trying to do something in the moment that bothers me, but they're really just trying to explore everything. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, we're the only ones they have in the world. A toddler only has their caregiver and what the caregiver decides to show them. So they just want to know everything, and really we'll just be there to give them lots of options. Maybe there's a new toy they're really excited to play with, or a new book they really want to read.
Yeah, and it's all about their learning, and they're doing it over and over and over again. And sometimes, that depending on what they're doing over and over again, that may be a lot of fun, and it can be exhausting, and
right.
Which really leads to. I mean, this is a wonderful PowerPoint or a picture here to show how each of these stages really moves us to think about how these things impact us as we're getting older, and what kind of support we've had along the way. And I think you brought up this thing about how stress helps us. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, for parents too, remember that slide where stress can be toxic, but it also can be positive, and it can be something that stretches us and helps us grow. And so when we're thinking about how to manage stress for a child, a lot of it can be modeling from the parent. And so, it's true what they say sometimes, that, the way a parent responds can kind of rub off on a child, because for me, I have a tendency, I can be anxious, and so sometimes that can rub off on my spouse, for example. And that actually can happen to our kids as well. And so knowing what your stress level is as a parent, and knowing how you can handle stress, because it's inevitable, is one of the best things you can do to really start to model helpful and effective strategies for a child to deal with stress. So I put here on the slide of how to shift from a stress hurts to a stress helps mindset. And there's nice little images on the side, right? It shows nature, it shows us getting hugs, we can get that oxytocin, helping our brain grow. But in reality, what we really want to do is just accept that we can't prevent stress, but stress is really that opportunity for us to grow. And try to be understanding. If we know what our stress level is, and we know that we get stressed and we're not perfect, that's an opportunity to help our children talk about that as well.
Well, and I think as adults, we can recognize we're stressed, and somehow when the children are in the room, they're not going to feel that. But we all know that when you are in a room with people, you can pretty easily get a sense of the joy or the tension or the pain or different things that are going on with no words being said.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
as you say, it's helpful for us to think about how do we respond to those situations. I really love the examples that you put here, because I think as a parent, like, it's really easy to be very reactive to something because they're let's face it, parents have a lot on their plate. There's a lot of things for them to be responding to, and it's typically at the time that you write, when you first get on the phone call with somebody that's important to make a decision or whatever, is the moment they're going to want your attention. And so thinking about different ways of approaching it, I do agree with you that being that model you're the example of what they're going to see, and that kids will do what they see. We see that all the time. But the first two comments here about why are you crying? Why would you do that? Little ones, depending on what they're doing at that time, they can't really tell you why that's happening, particularly a baby who's crying.
Right. They might not have the language and the imagery that comes with it of why are you crying kind of has like that frustrated tone that comes with it, and almost like I just need it to stop. And so the more that we learn about our stress, we learn, I can phrase things differently, and I can help my emotions kind of calm down a little bit differently as well, if I notice it and if I pay attention to it. So this really helps, because if you're feeling like you want to say, why are you crying? Or you're feeling extra stressed and frustrated, you can remind yourself, oh wait, when I think about why are you crying, I can say, oh, I see that you're sad. Do you want to talk about it? I see that you're sad. Do you want to talk about it? And again, this is the same thing that would help you or I if we were stressed, or somebody else that wants to talk about why they're feeling stressed. Just being able to rephrase it and reimagine what someone can do when they're stressed makes a world of a difference.
Well, and I this comment here, when you ask a child what's going on with you, because I do think as adults, whether you're a teacher or a Girl Scout leader or a coach, or you can see the nonverbals going on sometimes with children, and just as you said, just a switch in how you're saying it can really open up the door. Instead of saying what's going on with you, I see something's bothering you, can we talk about it? Or maybe that isn't the time to talk about it, and you can say, I see something's bothering you, can we talk about this later? Or allow the opportunity to at least acknowledge something is happening at that time.
Yeah.
Really shows a lot of sensitivity.
Yeah.
And I think really helps children feel like they're being seen in a way that's respectful.
I'll talk about the deflated balloon with you, Amy.
Okay.
Okay, so when I talk to people about anger management or just managing emotions in general, because most emotions come from love or anger. So no matter what it is, it may be stemming from those two emotions. And so when you think of a balloon, right, if I get frustrated about something, I didn't get the chocolate milk that I love to drink every day, then I'm going to blow that balloon up just a little bit. I should have brought one to show you. And then if later I wake up late and I didn't make it somewhere on time, I blow that balloon up just a little bit more. And then a bunch of other things happen throughout the day that could be big, they could be little, but just enough breath so that that balloon really fills up. And I'm not doing anything to release the air, like saying, can we talk about this? What do I do? Just things to, talk to someone that cares about me, to let that balloon deflate on its own. If I keep getting angry, that balloon just blows up. And so that's the imagery that I give to people, and it's been really helpful for people that I've talked to know, when is my balloon getting too full? When do I need to think of a more healthy way and calm way to manage the way that I'm feeling in the moment, so that it doesn't get to the point that I explode?
Well, and I think what we're finding now is that people's level of stress, even though we want to believe it's not too much, we recognize that all the different variables and the changes that keep happening when it comes to COVID or people being sick or just constant change. You go to get something to eat and it's taking longer than you expected, or just the day-to-day unexpected moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think considering what is it that can help that little one. And you know what? It doesn't have to be a little one. It can be a 15-year-old. It can be a 10-year-old.
Yeah. It could be an 18-year-old.
It could be an 18-year-old. And how we think about what we're saying and how we're saying it can really be a game changer in a difficult situation. If you think about the people who have gone through so much difficulty and they're so grounded and seem so strong, you really take a look at that and wonder what was it that helped them think about different ways of being resilient to get them through that. And as we talked about earlier, trying to be that example for the children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And can you I want to talk about what to do when I really need to seek help.
Okay.
What do I do? Do you want to go to the next slide?
Sure. That would be great.
So when I think about parents who are stressed, and I'm telling them about there's toxic stress, there's positive stress, there's tolerable stress, it all can start to become a lot of information. And so parents are probably wondering, well, how do I know if I need to seek help or if this is just something I can do on my own by myself? The thing that we actually talked about early on is when there's a serious change in what's normal for your child, that's when it's probably time to get help. Because again, every child is so different. It's hard for any therapist or any professional to say when exactly is the time, because so many children are different. Some children are quieter. They prefer to be quiet. Some children like to make a lot of noise and explore way more than others. Both are normal. But when your child is doing what is different for them, then we have to start to ask them questions. Did something change? You used to like to explore a whole lot and you haven't done that in a couple days. What's going on? And see if they have anything to say.
Well, and I think, this last, which leads us to your last statement, and it's always okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
This is just our last slide here that goes into different resources for children's stressors. And, to be honest with you, I recognize that the food pantries, meaning food, to be well nourished and being able to eat healthy makes a big impact on
a child's mood.
Their mood, the way their brain is developing, and you have some other suggestions here as well.
Right. You always want to rule out something medical before you think that it's a mental health issue, just to make sure there's nothing serious going on that you wouldn't already have caught by a doctor. And then let's say a medical professional has said that, everything checks out, they're healthy, there's no other reason for them to be behaving in a stressful way that you're seeing, then it's quite okay to get a therapist and to have a therapist. As long as your kid is 5 years and older, that's when they can start working with therapists, just to sit down with your child to say, hey, let's play a little bit. Let's just observe the child and just see how he's doing. A lot of people think it can be intimidating for a child to see a therapist, but it's actually very fun. They get to play with sand and play with dolls, and I would really encourage it for any parent who's thinking about it.
Well, and the last resource that we put on the screen there was the American Academy of Pediatrics. They have a website called healthychildren.org, and that really has a wealth of different resources for families and parents. And so, with all these ideas that we've shared with you today, we just really want to thank you, our audience, and Dawn for just being, wonderful information for us to share with the community. And we hope to see you again, and we wish everybody a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.